Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the Witch's Wheel of the Year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. And welcome back to another episode of Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your liminal host, Megan Angus. I know, I'm a little bit here and a little bit there. Let's just talk about the ghostly elephant in the room. I have not been putting up episodes of this podcast as regularly currently as I have in the last couple of years, and that is because I am a little burnt out. And rather than being responsible around my burnout and purposefully setting aside some time to not do work, I just, have been flaking on things. I don't know if anybody can relate to that. So I am purposefully setting aside some time in the next couple of weeks to stop, refresh, recoup, reinvigorate, all that good stuff, and then come back even stronger. In the meantime, here's your weekly podcast. But I just wanted to address that. Yes, a couple of episodes have gone by the wayside. I have notes written for them. And all sorts of stuff. But it is what it is, right? This is life. Even I, a witch, has my failings, or my short ends, however you want to think about that. So, maybe this also is something that you needed to hear. Are you pushing yourself too hard right now? Are you expecting too much from yourself? Maybe it's time for you to pull over on the side of the road and take a nap and drive later in the road trip of life. But I'm okay. I mean, ish, everything's okay ish. Yes, there's some wild things happening in my life. There's wild things happening with my living situation. Lots of question marks. I don't have a lot of information or answers. And that stuff is super activating and triggering for me. And so I know that there's a route to me sort of freezing up when it comes to my other work. And this is just my process. This is me working with me. And rather than demanding stuff from myself that I can't deliver, I'm just stopping. And I probably could have communicated that to myself and other people a little bit better, but here we are, right? We're all going to make it through this. It's going to be okay. So I have forgiven myself. I hope you forgive me too. And on with the show, right? Because, at the end of the day, there's no rest for the wicked. So here we are. All right. Let's talk about it. Before we get into all of the stuff, here's all of the preamble bullshit. Our next class is going to be in June. This is for our 2023 Wheel of the Year series, and we will talk about Litha. This will be a 6-week guide to summer solstice, midsummer, the height. We are stepping into the height of the sun's power for this solar cycle that we are currently in. And that class is going to be in June. This will be a free live stream on my YouTube channel. Anybody around the world can join us. Heckle me in chat if you dare. Folks who are subscribed to my Patreon at the Venus level and higher, that's $9 a month and higher, will have access to the Beltane workbook, the Litha workbook, the Litha calendar, and playlists, so, and digital spells and all the other stuff that ends up in the Patreon folders. There's a lot of stuff in there. And I did this for the last class. I'm going to do it for the Litha class as well. There will also be a separate um, link in the description of the video where you can just buy the workbook by itself. It won't have the calendar with it. It's just the workbook. But yeah, you can buy that as a standalone thing from my store. Then later in June, I will be teaching a workshop on tools for Litha at Cascadian Midsummer, which is a pagan music festival here in Washington. I don't know if they still have tickets available. The last time that I looked, they were getting pretty low. They also just made an announcement that they are looking for volunteers. So if you are low on funds, but you are wanting to attend this incredible festival, I am not the only cool thing happening there. Trust. It's 3 days of badassery. um, check in with those cats because they are offering free 3-day passes for folks who are willing to volunteer to help put the festival together. So check into that stuff. cmfest.org. That's the last time I'm going to add for those guys, or probably not. I'll probably mention it again. It's a cool thing. I can't help it. I love going out there and hanging out with those cats and doing that thing every year. It's been very cool. Okay, that's it. We're going to have a podcast now this week. So many thank yous to my patrons who make it possible for me to do this podcast without ads. If you're hearing ads with this podcast that I didn't record, I didn't put those ads there. So quit that. All right, let's get into this. This week we are looking at the Beltane season, Black New Moon in Taurus, Lunar Week 8. Okay, there's a lot of words in that sentence. So let's ground into what all it is that we are talking about in this week's episode. First off, let's start off with Beltane. We are in the heart of Beltane season. Beltane is a single day holiday or an entire season. I tend to think of the Sabbats as seasons. Some other cultures do, some do not. And Beltane kicks off for pagans, witches, and heathens April 30th, May 1st-ish. And can be celebrated on one long, lovely night. It can be celebrated over the course of a couple of days, or you can celebrate it throughout the season. And within what I think of as Beltane season, we will pass through the sign of Taurus, and we will pass through the sign of Gemini. So we have just moved through the 4 weeks of Taurus, and we are about to step into the 4 weeks of Gemini. And for me, there is a bit of an energetic shift there from the first half of Beltane to the second half of Beltane. Generally speaking, when we're working throughout the Beltane season, we are dealing with issues like fertility, fecundity, and action. And breaking that down for witches, heathens, and pagans, the kind of stuff that we are working on for ourselves and that we are working on facilitating for community are issues around, processes around stuff that concerns fertility, sexuality, whatever that means for you, union of energies, initiation into interpersonal mysteries. And I go into that pretty heavy in this year's Beltane class. If you haven't seen it, it's available on YouTube. It's also available right here, wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. Just scroll down through the last couple of episodes and you should be able to see the Beltane class. But also, what else? Love. And boy, isn't that a big word, right? Love can be expressed and be experienced in so many different ways and for so many different reasons. So all of that stuff comes under the auspices of Beltane season. The return of the passion and vitality that we will work with in summer. I'm going to come back to that. Rites of passage. I'm going to come back to that too. Playing, spirit work, and divination. Now, I talk about this again in the Beltane class quite a bit, but divination is actually really an important magical practice during Beltane season because we are officially out of winter, right? We have Ostara, that's the kickoff from spring. But for a lot of cultures around the Northern Hemisphere, it's still pretty damn cold during spring. You might still have snow on the ground. There's still snow on the ground in plenty of places right now, especially with the intense weather that we had this last winter. And so, while spring is technically the end of winter, we often don't actually feel the end of winter until Beltane season. A lot of stuff doesn't really start to grow. We can't really start to plant things until Beltane season, and so there's a lot of divination here. And that's because we're sort of crossing a threshold from winter into summer, from the dark half of the year to the light half of the year, and we want to know what's coming up. What do we need to plan for? What, now that we are entering this new paradigm, this new reality, as it were, what do we need to work on? What do we need to pay attention to? What do we need to watch out for? And that's where our divination practices come in. So if you're a diviner, if you read cards, if you read stones, if you read runes, if you read shells, if you read clouds, if you read candle flames, like whatever it is, this is a really auspicious time to offer your services, not just practice your service for yourself, which you should, and that's awesome. But this is also a really auspicious time to offer your services to other folks, to try to help them, right? To give that little bit of extra information and a little bit of assistance. So just throwing that out there. So it's a cool time of year for doing that. Playing and pranking and being silly, vitally important during Beltane season. I also go into this pretty heavily in the Beltane class, but it really is about waking up that energy again and coming back to the body, coming back to the spirit, coming back to the fire, basically, and saying to ourselves, yes, my heart is pumping, my blood is pumping, let's do this, let's go. Rites of passage. So, as I just mentioned, Beltane season is this threshold moment where we leave the dark half of the year and we enter into the bright half of the year. And so, uh, throughout Beltane season, we experience lots of moments of initiatory power, initiatory experiences. In Ostara season, we tend to see the fertility and the sexuality and the fecundity and, ultimately rites of passage that come from those types of activities centered more on the plant world and the animal world. By the time we get into Beltane, that energy and that idea begins to center its focus on the human world. So, you know, sex, sensuality, sexuality, all of that stuff, those are all rites of passage moments for people, right? Depending on how we engage that energy. Maybe we have come of age and it's time for us to start experimenting with that stuff. That's a rite of passage. Maybe we have changed genders and we are coming into a brand new world of experiencing our sexuality and other people's sexuality with ours. That's a rite of passage. Maybe we started growing hair somewhere we've never grown hair before. Maybe we stopped growing hair somewhere we always had hair. Those are all rites of passage. And that's all absolutely honored, celebrated, and centered here in Beltane season. Really, really important. Um, and the last thing that I mentioned here that I wanted to come back to was the return of the passion and vitality that we will work with in summer. Now, for me, the Sabbats all connect to each other. They all, resolve the Sabbat that came before and induct us into the Sabbat that's coming next. They all kind of do this work with each other. For me, no Sabbat stands alone. They're all interconnected. And so while we have our Beltane work, that is very much about Beltane and doing the Beltane thing. Beltane season is also the pre-funk for Litha. So in Beltane season, we absolutely have our work that is appropriate and necessary in this moment, but we also have our work to get ready for the next thing that's coming. And in spring, which encompasses Ostara and Beltane. During spring season, we are waking back up from winter. And we have a bunch of phases and stages of that process that we go through. But we are coming back from the lands of the dead. We're coming back from our underworld journey. And so for me, in Ostara season, we kind of like gently come back into that. And then by the time we hit Beltane, it's like, okay, now I can like start to put on some speed and I can start to like really like apply some force to this process. But ultimately, the totality of spring season, Beltane season included, is about opening up, experimenting, waking up, coming back, um, checking things out, being curious, asking questions, saying to ourselves, what if? Why not? Let's try. I don't know. Let's see. Let's find out. That is at the heart of our spring energy. Let's find out. I don't know. Let's find out. I've never had that before. Let's find out. And again, in Ostara season, this is way more about it's a little bit abstract. It's about the plant world. It's about, the elemental world. But as we move through Beltane season, I don't know, let's find out, starts to be more about humans and our interactions with humans. Ultimately, though, we are planting lots and lots of seeds. However you would like to work with that metaphor. We're planting lots and lots of seeds throughout Ostara season. Seeds for the body, seeds for the heart, seeds for the mind, seeds for the ego, seeds for the character, seeds for the soul, seeds for the community, seeds for the past, seeds for the future. We're planting lots and lots of seeds. And as any gardener knows, we want lots and lots and lots of starts because they're not all going to survive. They're not all going to make it. In spring season, we kind of have to act like all of them have a chance. That's the idea, because we don't know today which of our starts, which of our seeds are actually not going to grow to fruition. We're not sure about that. So right now we're planting every single seed that we can, and we're treating every single one of them as something really precious. But when we move into Litha, when we move into summer, we will begin to claim some of that stuff. And this is what I mean by this phrase, the return of the passion and vitality that we will work with in summer. It has arrived in spring and we're cultivating it right now. But then when we move into summer, we claim it and we begin to grasp and hold the starts that are actually going to grow to fruition. Again, work with this metaphor however you like. But that's what we're doing. That's what's up. So in Beltane season, that process gets a little more serious. It's a little more human oriented. We go from the abstract, we go from literally pushing seeds into soil to something that has a lot more to do with humans and flesh and bodies and pleasure and delights and things along those lines. It's very distracting. It's quite wonderful. Okay. So I just wanted to ground us in the season. I feel like I haven't said that at the beginning of a podcast in a while. And I really wanted to take a few minutes to kind of like get us into what the heck are we doing in Beltane season? Well, that's what we're doing. We're humping. We're getting randy for the earth. Okay. It's for nature. don't get twisted. All right. So with that said, now let us turn to this black new moon that we have in Taurus here at the beginning of this week. So 8:53 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day / the next day for everybody else around the planet, we have a black new moon at 28 degrees of Taurus. So why is this a black new moon? Okay. So the idea of black moons, blue moons, micro moons, super moons, some of these are kind of older concepts, some of these are kind of newer concepts, but the important thing to remember is that there's lots of different interpretations out there depending on which school you are working with. So astrology has its definitions, astronomy has its definitions, and paganism has its definitions. So something to remember there. Just because one group of people refer to something as blah 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 doesn't mean another group of folks are going to use that same term. Okay. All the same, why is this a black new moon? Because This is officially our third of 4 new moons in a single season. Normally, you would have 3 months in any season. That hasn't changed. And normally, within those 3 months, you would have 3 lunar cycles. And in each lunar cycle, you'll have 1 new moon and 1 full moon. But we got wacky this year, and we had 2 new moons in Aries. And so this has ultimately provided us with 4 new moons in spring. And so this is the third one of those. Hence why this is called a black new moon. Now, does that make it extra potent? Yes, it actually does. In my opinion, yes, it does. From a magical standpoint, from a pagan standpoint, a witchcrafting or spellcrafting standpoint, yes, this black new moon is quite potent. So this is a fantastic moon for getting some stuff started. That's what we're doing with all of our new moons. It is a seed, it is a start to a process. Now, something I've talked about, kind of rolling it back, hi, Queen of Tangents. If you've never been here before, hi, Megan Angus, I'm Queen of Tangents. Something I've talked about a few times this year already in the discussion of the astrology is that the energy of this year astrologically kind of dragged at the very beginning of the year. We had a bunch of retrogrades, and then it sort of kicked in. And then we had like this really cool lunar solar pattern where it was like the sun would move into a sign, then we'd instantly have a new moon. We had 4 of those in a row. Bam, bam, bam. But all the same, it was sort of this like start, start, start. Okay. And now we're going to slow down again. We've had we've just gotten out of Mercury retrograde. And ultimately, how I see the energy of the astrology this year is the starting parts are kind of slow. The parts of the year where it's like time to start a thing are slow and concentrated. And then the rest of the year, we have some weird astrology this year. And it really isn't about making forward progress. To me, I think that a lot of the seeds that we are planting right now, metaphorically, physically, and whatever, are things that we are not going to harvest this year. They're projects that have a bigger breadth to them than that. And so they have a longer timeline. And this year is going to be about getting things started and then adjusting and maybe going back one step and adjusting. And then we're moving forward. And a big part of that is because Jupiter has just moved into Taurus. Literally happened on Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Jupiter moved into Taurus. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. I want to finish up talking about this moon specifically before I fly off the handle into yet another tangent. So, this new moon is a great time for starting things. Any new moon in Taurus is going to be an incredible time for starting things, particularly on the material plane, particularly when it has to do with our resources, our security, our pleasures, our fecundity, our fertility, any project that we want to start that is going to add deliciousness to our life. Excellent time to start it in a Taurus new moon. Now, this new moon is, as I said, at 28 degrees of Taurus. It is square Mars in Cancer at 29 degrees. It is sextile Neptune in Pisces at 27 degrees. And it is trine Pluto in Aquarius at 0 degrees. Now, remember, I said this also in the last couple of weeks. Pluto is just camped out at 0 degrees of Aquarius, like pack a lunch, camped out, shoes off, kicked back, not going anywhere anytime soon. So anytime any of our other celestial bodies pass over 0 degrees of Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, or Taurus, they have to kind of like pay a toll to Pluto camped out at 0 degrees of Aquarius, because either they're squaring Pluto or they're in opposition to Pluto. So this new moon is sort of highlighting that fact that Pluto is like there at 0 degrees of Aquarius. But, and also, we have like half the sky is parked in Taurus right now. We have the North Node here, and Mercury, and the Sun, and Jupiter, and Uranus, along with this new moon. So, coming back to me saying that this is a fantastic new moon for getting stuff started, for putting seeds in the ground, literally or figuratively, I mean it. And, you know, with the potency of it, and with having Jupiter step into Taurus just a couple days ago, 100%, I do not think that this is a moon where, like, oh, I've got to get it all in the first couple of days if I'm going to do it. I genuinely think that this is a lunar cycle, like a lunar start, that is going to be potent right up to the full moon. So I really feel like you absolutely have this entire next 7 days to work with this new moon, if not the next 14-ish days to work with this new moon. It's frilly, it's fancy, it's got doodads on it. This new moon has been vajazzled, okay? I'm going to go on record. Honestly, I'm going to go on record and say that this new moon has been vajazzled. Even with the square from Mars. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Mars can whine all at once at 29 degrees of Cancer. It's about to step into Leo, and I don't want to hear it. So, yes, good, great, awesome stuff. This is our fixed Earth of fixed Earth. This is our new moon in Taurus in this while the sun is in Taurus. So, bam, bam. There we go. Great, great time for starting stuff. Anything else I want to say about this moon? I don't know. Just get it out. Like, do it. Make it happen. Be it. Be it. Don't be it. Don't dream it. Be it. It's time. When we are hanging out with a new moon in Taurus, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action. The ears, the mouth, the teeth, the throat, the neck, and the shoulders. So our hearing mechanisms, our speech mechanisms, and the shoulders to a lesser extent. This is where the body sort of blurs between Taurus and Gemini, but Taurus rules the hearing mechanisms and the speech mechanisms. And as I say, every single podcast, I am not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of witchery. So check in with your trusted health advisor if you are wanting to incorporate any of this information into your health routine. And as I say, always, you can always work with the metaphor. In fact, I encourage both if it's right for you to do so, the metaphor of this. So is there something needing to get said? Is there something you're shouldering right now? Is there something that you're holding back? Is there something that you're listening sharply to or not wanting to hear any more of, etc.? Okay. For our plant body work, first off, it's a new moon. So spin your plants a quarter turn diasyl, which is sunwise or clockwise, so that you get nice balanced growth on all of the sides of your plants. What other stuff are we doing with a brand new Taurus new moon? We are grafting, budding, layering, taking cuttings. Very appropriate. Planting root vegetables, doing transplanting, as well as grafting annual crops that are going to bear their fruits or their leaves or whatever above ground, especially the leafy crops, especially kale, spinach, whatever. Also a great time for planting cereals, grains, melons, cucumbers, celery, cabbage, spinach, etc. And we have stuff dedicated to goddesses and gods of these vegetables and fruits. So very appropriate. All right. Let's move on to the rest of the information for this day. Okay. The only other thing I want to say about this day is that later in the day, we will have the moon entering Gemini. And then, bam, we're off, headed towards Gemini season. I'm not going to talk about all, I'm not going to go into the details of all of our holy days this week. Um, but our holy days for Friday, May 19th are the Feast of Pudenciana from our Mexican friends and ancestors, Savitri Brata from our Hindu friends and ancestors, Shanti Jayanti from our Hindu friends and ancestors, and A Gender Pride Day, which is a global celebration of folks who eschew gender. Again, perfect timing as we begin to head into Gemini season, ruled by Mercury, our premier non-binary, polygendered freak of a deity. Absolute freak. All right, let's move into the rest of the week, shall we? Saturday, May 20th. Starting off with our astrology for this day, we have the planet Mars moving into the sign of Leo. Hot, spicy. Who doesn't love that? Everybody who's water based and earth based probably is like, shut up. So we've got these two, fiery elements together, right? It's only going to be all good, right? Well, let's calm down. It is Mars, right? So Mars is always looking for an excuse to be argumentative or impatient or, very forceful about a thing. So let's talk about Leo. Leo energy can be very brash, very ego based. It can be very showy, very braggadocious. And Mars is happily into all of those behaviors, happily into those attitudes. And so that's where things can go like a little wonky with Mars hanging out in Leo. But Leo is also magnanimous, generous, noble. Leo is very excited to fight or argue on behalf of the downtrodden. Leo is excited to work or fight on behalf of those who need protecting. And that is the very best usage of Mars's energy and Mars's power. And so the real argument here is kind of like, looking at my notes, it's like real courage versus just having a big mouth. And that's going to be Mars's challenge as it moves through the sign of Leo over the next, month to 6 weeks or so, is that it's going to have to pick the right times when it's just, when it's appropriate to just run at the mouth, and when is it appropriate to actually say something of value, and when is it appropriate to actually summon that fieriness and that warrior energy that Mars carries for something useful, to fight on behalf of the downtrodden, to show real courage. So that's going to be all of our work, because Mars is going to be in Leo for everyone, right? So take a second, look at your natal chart, see where Leo is, know that Mars is rolling through this part of your chart for the next, several weeks. It's just finished up its retrograde. So we don't have a retrograde from Mars for the rest of the year. It's just going to be cruising on through. But wherever you have Leo in your natal chart, some fiery pizzazz is coming through. Somebody is bringing the cayenne pepper. Somebody is bringing through the crystal hot sauce. Somebody, or the sriracha, whatever you prefer. So we're not going to fight about it. Though Mars would love to. But this is where we're going to have a little hot sauce in the chart or in our lives. Look at the house or the houses that are connected to Leo. That's where Mars is going to be rolling through. So you might be feeling a little spicy in those areas, a little impatient, fired up, more willing to argue about what you think is right or good. All of that stuff. That's Mars. Okay, what else is happening on Saturday the 20th? Hours later, hours after Mars enters Leo, it immediately opposes Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius, as I previously mentioned. So here's that moment of sort of paying the toll. And I'm looking at my notes and I have things written down like competition and power dynamics. And Mars plus Pluto is a spicy meatball. That is a spicy, spicy meatball. Mars plus Pluto generally wants war, wants to fight about it, wants to blow up everybody, wants to just decimate the situation. And these two are in opposition. So there's kind of a moment of impasse. It's important to remember that Pluto is the slower planet. Mars will move on. Mars is the one activating the opposition, and Mars will be the one to end it. But that also, as a metaphor, really works nicely for us in that Mars's position and attitude about things may change. Pluto's is not going to change. So if we find ourselves on this day, this is a Saturday, right? So some people will be at work, some people will not be at work. But this might be a day where you are witnessing some hardcore power dynamics in your personal life, in your work life, in society at large. Um, and you may have this urge to kind of rise up from an ego based place and be like, let me tell you some shit. As I always say, I'm never going to be the one that says, you know, if somebody needs to get told and you're the one to tell them, let's get to telling. But is that the best use of your energy? Is that the best use of your time? Is this going to ultimately help the situation? Or is it going to hinder things or send things backwards? Those are the questions I'm always going to ask you to ask yourself. That's it. Okay. What else do we have going on Saturday, May 20th? We actually have some pretty interesting holy days. So, first off, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Alcyon, not to be confused with Halcyon. It's Alcyon, starts with an A. And this is one of the Pleiades that is found in the constellation or the cluster of stars that we call the Pleiades, which is found in the shoulder of Taurus. And this is going to sound like a cop out, but truly, there's so much to say about these stars that there's too much to say about it. But what I can say is this: the Pleiades are a cluster of stars that literally nearly every civilization has a myth or a folk tale connected to this cluster of stars. That alone is pretty interesting. These stars are often connected with rain, and they are also often connected with tragedy or sadness or something going wrong or something bad happening in a lot of the myths that they are connected to. Ultimately, the rains that they indicate are the rains that the current crops need to do their thing. Some crops were planted way back in January, February. Yes, even then, I know, because the wheel is turning, people. Just roll with it. And some of those crops are coming up now. We'll talk about that later in the week. But other crops are just coming out of the greenhouse and just getting plopped into the ground. And this is the first big rain that we are hoping for to happen. That is going to saturate the ground and really make for a beautiful, fertile, fecund growing environment for these shoots that we are trying to grow. The Lascaux bull panorama shows a collection of bulls or aurochs running along, and one of them has the Pleiades directly over its shoulder. Um, this is the cave drawings at Lascaux, and this was painted 17,000 years ago. So humans have been paying attention to the Pleiades and connecting them with the idea of bulls and cows and bison and Taurus for a very, very, very long time. Yeah. Okay. Lots of other stuff that could be said. What else do I want to say about this? Alcyon is one of the 15 Behenian fixed stars. We do not have enough time to talk about what the Behenian fixed stars are, but you might want to do a little bit of research into that. They're kind of thought of as like sort of like pillars that hold up the sky. And Taurus and this portion of Taurus is also definitely thought of as this place in the universe where, you know, this is a rock in the universe upon which other things are built, or one of the main pillars sort of holding up the sky. Fancy stuff. Fancy stuff. Okay. What else is going on this day? From our Slavic friends and ancestors, from approximately May 20th to May 30th, we have the festival of Grudi Rosno. This comes at the end of the festival cycle Rodanitsa, which we talked about quite a bit several weeks ago. And Grudi Rosno again, as I said, happens approximately at the end of May, these last 10 days of May. And in this time period, the Vorvas of the community, that would be the magicians, the soothsayers, the sorcerers, the witches, the medicine people, the shamans, the whatever titles we're using here for folks that hold those positions. They bring sacrifices to the god Rod for rain. Hello, here we go again. Ultimately for good productive harvests. But that is the least of the work that is done during this time period. It is also a time period where these people who hold this role in community are honored. They are singled out. They are blessed. They are acknowledged by their community. The community says thank you to these folks for doing the work that they do. And these folks are magicians, sorcerers, witches, soothsayers, whoever you are taking out their tools and they are cleansing and re-blessing their tools. They are physically cleaning them, shining up the metal, sharpening up the knives, really, cleaning out the bottom of the cauldron, that kind of stuff, and refurbishing, repairing anything that needs to be repaired, and ultimately zhuzhing it up and putting it on display. Here is me. I'm this person that does this magical work, and here are my magical tools. Check it out. And then after the repair and after the literal physical cleansing, they are energetically cleansed and energetically blessed and sort of rededicated for the year to whatever that magical work is that those folks are doing. So that's happening from approximately from the 20th to the 30th. From our Vodun friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Simbi Blanc. There is a whole bunch of festivals and feasts dedicated to Simbi, the god. This is a serpent god, and Simbi Blanc is a white serpent. Not going to get too far into this. This is connected to ancestor work and a bunch of really cool stuff. Go check it out and do some research on it, or pay somebody to teach you about it that actually is in that practice and tradition. And as we step through Beltane season, we're in the last, hours of Taurus, and we're going to start to move through Gemini. We're going to start to see more and more that white, and I don't mean Caucasian at all. I mean literal white, like no color white, actual white, glowing white, radiant white, white like I'm looking at the sun. Is going to be more and more apparent in the deities that we work with and the folklore symbolism that we're working with. More and more things are going to be glowing white, radiant white, have a glowing white head, a glowing white body, something along those lines. We're going to see more and more of that. So this is one of the first ones. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Rosalia. This is yet another feast and procession day dedicated to roses. We've had several of those throughout May. Rose being the number one flower dedicated to and connected to Taurus. Again, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. And last but not least, from our Norse friends and ancestors, we have Frigablot. This is a blot, means blood. It is a word now, then-ish, now definitely used not to mean a sacrifice, but to mean a feast. Or a spilling of something. So we would spill some mead on the ground or some wine on the ground to the goddess Frigga. Certainly an important character to work with during Beltane season. And again, all of this stuff is about doing our divinatory practices, stepping through gates and thresholds of initiation, and the tools that oversee that work, the people who oversee that work, all of that good stuff. Okay, that brings us to Sunday, May 21st. And what is our astrology for that day? Everybody take a drink of water. Let's stay hydrated. The sun moves into Gemini. Hey! They don't need any more encouragement, but here we are. I love you, my Geminis. I love you. But you all need a spanking. Okay. So, Our sun moves into Gemini. This is true for everyone. So, again, take out your natal charts, look at your chart, find Gemini, look at the houses that are connected to Gemini, the house or houses that are connected to Gemini. And that is where the sun is moving through your natal chart. So, if you have any planets there, the sun is going to be conjunct those. If you have planets in other air signs, Libra or Aquarius, the sun will be trine those placements. So, sun in Gemini, we're all a little chattier. I actually recommend this every year during a Mercury retrograde at some point, but and you could have already done it during the Mercury retrograde that we just had, but if you haven't taken a social media diet, the sun in Gemini might be a fantastic time to do that. Gemini is our sign of communications in all of its forms and our base level of socializing, the most basic levels of socializing, which include things like gossip, texting, scrolling on social media until our thumbs fall off, little things like that. Um, when the sun is in Gemini, we all can become a little more curious, a little more chatty, a little more excited about data and information, just knowing stuff for the sake of knowing things. Um, and that's cool. That's fun. That's an exciting thing to work with. So studying during Gemini season is great. Writing poetry or really writing anything during Gemini season is great. Starting writing projects during this time, cool stuff. Okay. And then what happens? Hours later, just like when Mars entered Leo, hours later, the sun enters Gemini, and then boom, it has an encounter with Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. But this is a trine. So we have the sun in Gemini trine Pluto in Aquarius at 0 degrees. What's that mean? Fa-bam. That's what the fuck it means. It means fa-bam. Um, this is, at the simplest level, a willingness to communicate, an opportunity for healing. Pluto is very dedicated to the idea of getting to the root of the thing to find the base of the problem, the base of the poison, and then bring it up to the surface so it can be healed. The sun is a giant spotlight, and the sun is in Gemini, and it wants to know. It wants to know what's going on. Pluto, the great investigator. So, bam. That's a pretty cool lineup. Do we have questions? They may have answers. Operators are standing by. So this is a great day for doing divinatory magic. Once again, this is a great day for asking questions and getting answers. Now, we may have to be creative in what we interpret as an answer. We may need to be more open minded about things than we are currently about when it comes to the types of answers that we might be getting back or the data or the information that's coming in. But all the same, this is a great day. So then what happens? Later in the day, the sun in Gemini sextiles Mars in Leo at 0 degrees. And so what starts out as a fun, chatty day turns into this might be a really great day for probing and getting answers to things, turns into, holy moly, the sun has just come into trine and sextile alignment with two of the biggest power engines in the zodiac, Mars and Pluto. Both very, very dedicated to getting the job done, whatever it is. So, think about it. In this week, we've had Jupiter step into Taurus. Then we have our new moon in Taurus, a black new moon in Taurus. We've got 700 planets piled up in Taurus. And now we have the sun step into Gemini and immediately come into this beautiful harmonic moment with Pluto and Mars. Wow. Wow. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So again, if there are some seeds that you want to get into the ground, if there are some projects that you want to get started, this is a beautiful time astrologically to look within and say, let's get it going. To look out into the universe and say, hey, can I have an extra shot of spiritual espresso? Please respectfully kick my ass into high gear. Let's fucking go. This is a great time for that. Awesome time for that. And then our moon moves into Cancer. And this is the best placement for the moon because the moon rules Cancer, and all of our expansion magics are magnified by 10 anytime the moon is in Cancer. So I don't know what you want, people. It's not going to get much better than this. Pretty incredible lineup of stuff, one after another. All right. Now, let's take another little drink of water. Refreshment, hydration, moisturized, right? We love it. Let's take a look at the holy days that we have rolling here from our Slavic friends. From approximately May 21st to May 27th, we have Green Week, which is also known as Semic. This is in conjunction with Rodonica, which we mentioned already, as well as Grudi Rosno, which we just talked about. And this is just like a massive cultural celebration of the return of spring, the power of the earth resurrecting itself and coming back to life, as well as the vitality and the general like urge that sort of rises up out of our spirit to like come and do stuff here in the world on the physical plane. And from our Bulgarian friends, from May 21st to May 23rd, we have Nestin Narvarsto, which is a very similar holiday. That's basically the same thing. It's just another name for it. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Festival of Carna. And this is a festival I want to take a second to talk about a little bit. So the goddess Carna is conflated frequently with another goddess named Cardia or Carda or Cardea or Cardia. Lots of like, were they the same goddess and these are different pronunciations? Were they iterations of each other? Were they two totally separate goddesses? They just happen to kind of be similar and do stuff at the same time of year. You know, your mileage may vary on that one. You figure it out, man. But what I think is dope and cool and chill about this goddess or these goddesses who are celebrated right now is that they are the Roman goddess of the hinge, like a doorway, like the hinge that your door hangs on. Romans were so dedicated to spirits of place. So the spirit of the floor itself, the spirit of the couch itself, the spirit of the window itself, and especially doorways and doors themselves, because every threshold was thought of as not just a physical thing that you walked through, but a spiritual event that you were walking through. Every single doorway was thought of as a threshold from one place to another place. And Cardia / Carna is the goddess that oversees this. So, here in the heart of this season that is all about thresholds and walking through rites of passage and gates of initiation, boom, we have this goddess that oversees literal thresholds and doorways. Pretty damn cool. Skimming over the Wikipedia page about this goddess or these two goddesses, there's lots of really cool information here. We even have a connection to the word Coeli. Our astrologers out there are going to recognize that word as the mid Coeli or the Io Coeli, which are the midheaven and the nadir or the bottom of our natal charts, and because those are thought of as doorways, those are uh, those are the doorways where we pass from one portion of the sky into the next, when we pass from one portion of our chart to the next. Um, the sun advances from one gate, and by the other he recedes. And so, scrolling further down, let's get into the portion of the wiki page that speaks specifically to Carna. Carna, her name is derived from carno or carnis, which means flesh or meat or food. Right? Think about words like carnal, carnivore. She was the guardian of the heart and the vitals in the vital organs of the body. But her feast day was marked as nefastus, aka you're not supposed to be doing stuff out in public. Like, you take care of this and you do the fancy religious shit and don't go pay bills or grocery shopping. Like, take care of this. Mashed beans and lard something very similar to like a refried beans dish or Hoppin' John's, were offered to her as a sacred dish. And so her day was known as the Bean Calends, which I love that. Since at this time, also, the bean harvest matured. What I love about this is just beans, right? I like beans, said a great philosopher named Brack at one point. But also, here on Turtle Island in North America, Native Americans, indigenous folks, are in the process of planting their three sisters, corns, bean, and squash. And so beans are being planted right now for one group of folks, and another group of folks is having a big celebration dedicated to a goddess of beans because they are harvesting their beans. I don't know. It's just cool. It's cool. Beans, the musical fruit. Come on. It's good times. But she also was connected to health. And then when we dig back, it seems like she got mixed up with a lot of stuff, or she oversaw a lot of stuff, because one group thinks of her as a lunar goddess. Another group thinks of her as a bean goddess. Another group thinks of her as a patroness of digestion. Which those all kind of sit together with me for me in reality. But anyways, bean goddess, bean calends, festival of Carna. Here we go. And as an extension of that, for our Roman friends and ancestors, it is Calende Iunius. For our Greek friends and ancestors, this is the month of Thargelion. Of course, it being a new moon, we are starting off a new Roman month and a new Greek month, a new lunar month. What else is happening on this day? From our Roman friends and ancestors, the Romans went ham on this particular new moon. We have the Dies Natalis of the Temple of the Tempestates. We have the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Juno Moneta. We have the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Mars, and on and on and on. Lots of temples to various deities being dedicated on this day. This is the new moon connected to the sign of Taurus. Taurus, the fixed earth sign. So yes, of course, we are going to have a lot of temple dedications, the physical monument to the deity, right? Set and centered here in the sign that oversees, dominion and production and creation here in the physical plane. Cool stuff. From our UK friends and ancestors, we have St. Helena's Day. From our pagan friends and ancestors, on the modern wheel of the year, we have the bright and dark Mother's Day. And from our Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have the day of Tefnut. Pretty cool Egyptian goddess. So, moving on to Monday, May 22nd. And now a brief word from our sponsor. That's me. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons who help me pay rent every month. You can leave a review on your podcast service, wherever it is that you listen to this. And if you are feeling especially hedonistic, you can give it a rating. 5 stars is actually the most occult rating that you could possibly give. Also, I have mentioned this for the last several weeks, but I swear to God, this is really happening. I will be announcing some workshops and some standalone classes in the new year, both on tarot as well as paganism and witchcraft. These classes will be limited entry. My patrons will have first access to sign up, and then folks following the newsletter, and then I will announce them publicly on social media and my website. I will be rerunning the 6-week Welcome to Tarot workshop. It was super fun. I'm very excited to teach it again. It is a dope workshop, if I do say so myself. And then I will be following up that workshop with 4 standalone single-day workshops. I'm expecting them to be 2 hours apiece, probably maybe closer to 3 hours apiece. And we will be talking about material that certainly is going to build off of what is in the workshop, but you won't have to take the workshop to be able to understand what's going on in the 4 standalone classes. And then I will also be offering some more in-depth stuff than what I already have offered in terms of witchcraft and paganism, but I don't want to say any more now. All right, that's the end of the ad. Leave a rating, goddammit. Thanks. This is a relatively chill day. We don't have a whole heck of a lot going on, but what we do have going on is certainly it's got some importance to it. So, in astrology, we have Mars in Leo square Jupiter in Taurus at 1 degree. So, we might be coming off of a pretty intense high from that Sun, Mars, Pluto jam the day before. It's pretty hot. It's pretty sexy. Let's be real. Okay. So then we come back to work on Monday and we're like, woo! And we are amped, we're pumped, we're psyched, maybe a little freaked out. And here comes the square from Jupiter. This can manifest a couple different ways. When we have a square from Jupiter, regardless of the other planets that we're talking about, when we have a square from Jupiter, oftentimes the way that can manifest for folks is we try to do too much. We say yes to too many things. Jupiter is, the planet of optimism, the planet of why not, the planet of I'll buy the next round. And sometimes that's appropriate for us, and sometimes that behavior is not appropriate for us. It's not, we can't, or we shouldn't, right? And so when we have a square from Jupiter, our inclination is to eat too much for us, say yes to too many things, spend too much, take on too much work, right? It's just overdoing it. Whatever it is that we're doing, we're overdoing it. Well, we're coming off the high of a conversation around power and power dynamics, right? Healing, maybe. Investigation, perhaps. Certainly fortitude, certainly, invigoration and things like that. But we might be feeling very empowered, and then we come up against this square. And so, in the best of circumstances, the square might just really be indicative of our response to those power dynamics, as saying, I can do it all, I can handle more, I can afford more, whatever, like too much, just taking on too much, saying yes to too many things, going overboard. In the worst case scenario, it becomes stuff like agitation and instigating problems with other people, wanting those power dynamics to come up to the surface so that we have an opportunity to flex and go overboard, right? Like, just in and of itself, like, oh, I spent too much on lunch. Cool. Well, that's an overboard that might hopefully be easy to remedy. But going overboard in power dynamics where you're having an argument with your spouse or your partner or your neighbor or your landlord or your boss or whatever, right? It has an opportunity to just really blow up and turn into something super stupid. We might be feeling overconfident, overly agitated, and again, wanting to instigate shit between us and other people or between other people and watch the power dynamics. So, what do I always say? Take a walk around the block, do some deep breathing, put yourself in time out. If you're feeling fussy, go sweat. If you're feeling like like go do something to push that energy through your body. Remembering, of course, don't go overboard. Drink some water, stretch, take care of yourself. Don't, don't blast out your knee or screw up your shoulder or whatever because you were going hard because the astrologer told me to, like, what the hell do I know about anything? Okay. So that's what's up for our astrology for May 22nd. Just keep your shit in order. Our holy day on this day comes from our Roman friends and ancestors, and it is the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Bologna. If you are not familiar with Bologna, let me help you become familiar with Bologna. Bologna, from the wiki page, was an ancient Roman goddess of war. Specifically, war, destruction, conquest, and bloodlust. So that, mixed with this square between Mars and Jupiter, starts to become a little more spicy, right? Thinking about the power dynamics from the day before with the Sun and Pluto included becomes a little more spicy. So again, you might be feeling an inclination to go to war. I can handle it, right? And maybe you can, but maybe that's still not the right method or way of dealing with whatever is going on. So just be present with yourself. Just be aware that kind of stuff is in the air on that day. There is a goddess of war that is expecting to have sacrifices made to her on that day. So, take care of yourself. There are other ways in Beltane's season to exorcise that Mars energy. And it's through other fun types of conquest, right? Different types of conquest. Different ways of making you sweat. Try that. Try that first if you have the capacity to do so. Try that stuff first. Okay, moving on to Tuesday, May 23rd at 6:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Later in the day for everybody else, we have our waxing crescent moon in Cancer at 17 degrees. This moon is conjunct Venus at 17 degrees, square Chiron in Aries at 18 degrees, and sextile Uranus and Taurus at 19 degrees. I've got the image of this up in the notes for patrons, for folks that are subscribed at the Mercury level, $5 level, and higher. So first off, again, there's a lot of words, so let's go through it. We have our waxing crescent. So this is the sprout. We have put the seed in the soil at the new moon. We've watered it. We've waited. And now, boop, 2 little leaves pop out. It's the sprout. That's our waxing crescent. And the challenge of the waxing crescent is, can it fight the forces of gravity? Can it pull itself up and away from the past and push towards the future? If you've been listening with me for a while, you've probably heard me say that before. And you've probably also heard me compare this moon to the balsamic moon, which is the waning crescent moon, last phase of the moon just before the new moon. So we have the balsamic, new moon, waxing crescent. And why I compare these two is because they're very similar in attitude to each other. In the balsamic moon, we are so done with that lunar process. We're done with it, we're tired, we're over it, and we are already reaching towards the future. We are already reaching towards whatever is coming next. And in the waxing crescent moon, we are reaching backwards to what was, to, find a handle, find a grip, find some balance, whatever. And generally speaking, in the waxing crescent, we want to push forward. We want to do what we can to let go of the old lunar cycle and move into the new lunar cycle and move into the new iteration of our process. That's what's up. Conjunct Venus in Cancer, fucking lovely. That is delicious. That's beautiful. That is harmonious, pleasure-oriented, delighting the senses oriented magic and work and practice. Square Chiron and Aries, there may still be some ego stuff that comes up for us. There may still be some painful things from the past. Makes sense with this sprouting seed, this sprouting waxing crescent that's like, can I move away from the past and move into the future and think about things, from the present, from now, not from the past. That square from Chiron might make that a little bit more difficult, might be bringing up some painful memories from the past. The sextile to Uranus and Taurus might be getting us to lean towards stuff we wouldn't normally lean towards. With Venus involved, moon in Cancer, there's a lot of opportunity for finding a lover or ending up flirting with somebody who we would never hang out with otherwise, right? Very, very different from whom we are. That's what Uranus is very excited about, is throwing a monkey wrench in the routine, wants to shake stuff up. So adopting an attitude of, let me try something different in terms of my process, whatever the process is, could be very, very powerful here. When we're doing our magic and the moon is in Cancer, everything is heightened. So as I said, this entire week really has all of these incredibly delicious moments of like, let me get my shit started. Let me do the thing. Let me initiate the thing. Let me put myself through the gate of initiation. Let me go through this rite of passage. Let's induct this new process and get it going. And so here is yet another day where we've got a lot of really cool astrology that's like, yup, let's get it going. Let's get the engine revved up and let's get out on the road and let's start making some moves. We're not doing anything definitive here. We're still just starting things, but excellent starts. Excellent starts. Um, there's no other astrology of note from that day. So let me just say this, for our lunar body work, when we have a waxing moon in Cancer, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action the breasts, the chest, the belly, and the lungs. So that whole portion of our corpus getting some special attention. And, again, as I said earlier, and as I always say, work with the metaphor if working with the physical iteration doesn't make sense for you, or isn't safe for you, or isn't right for you. And then for our plant body work, we want to plant anything. And specifically, planting for abundance. So if you are planting some plants that you are hoping, if you have plants that you are hoping are just going to go off this year, plant during the Cancer moon. And if you are planting plants for magical work dedicated to abundance, this is also the way to read that. And this, again, is a fantastic time for planting those plants or starting those plants. Especially annual crops that bear their fruit, leaves, or whatever above ground. Also, the viney crops. Of course, we've got all this emphasis on beans this week. How could we ignore the vines? We can't. So any plants that are vining plants are going to do fantastic planted at this time. Corn, peas, beans, tomatoes, watermelon, cucumbers, zucchini. You know. And what else is doing really good with our waxing crescent in Cancer? Stuff like cereals, grains, and we have holy days dedicated to cereal goddesses this week. Melons, celery, cabbage, spinach. And then beyond all of that stuff, grafting, layering, taking cuttings, watering our plants, and doing whatever kind of irrigation work we might need to do, all favored during our waxing moon in Cancer. As I said, we have no particularly important astrology for this day. So moving directly on to the holy days of May 23rd, we have from our Canadian friends and ancestors, Victoria Day. From our Roman friends and ancestors, the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Hercules Magnus Custos. And from our Yoruba friends and ancestors, the Feast of Shango or Chongo. All right. Moving on to Wednesday, May 24th. We have the moon entering Leo on this day. And we have Venus in Cancer square Chiron in Aries at 18 degrees. I already talked about this a bit with the moon. It's exact here on the 24th. So you might be feeling the effects of Venus square Chiron the 23rd, the 24th, and maybe even into the 25th. And squares to Chiron are just tough. Let's just be real. They're tough. They can feel very tenderoni. They can feel very emo. Venus in Cancer certainly is emo and tenderoni. So, just be prepared for some inner saboteur bullshit. We might be getting some, negative self-talk on these days. We're not having it, but it might be there. And lean in, what I was going to say there was lean in on the Venus in Cancer as a means of soothing yourself, however. Venus in Cancer can be very like, I'm sucking my thumb, and so I'm just going to eat candy for dinner because I feel bad. And it can be very juvenile in the way that it approaches difficult situations. Or it can be very regressive in its behaviors and go back to like childlike behaviors in terms of dealing with challenges and stuff like that. So, just sit with yourself, observe yourself, watch what comes up for you. Maybe nothing comes up for you, right? Maybe these are spots in your chart where everything is chill. Maybe you're already deep into the work of of Chiron moving through Aries. And so this is just another day in the life of Chiron and Aries. But this might be a day where you're feeling especially tender, especially sensitive about stuff, about personal stuff. Um, Mom stuff might come up on this day, or parent stuff might come up on this day. And so just be kind to yourself, but don't regress, in unhealthy ways. I'll say that. Don't regress in unhealthy ways. Um, maybe some small regressive behaviors are okay, but catch yourself, like I'm going to have one scoop of ice cream for dinner, not two. Okay. Let's be reasonable. That thing. All right. So that's our astrology for May 24th. The holy days for May 24th. Uh, kind of an interesting lineup of holy days we've got here. So from our Greco-Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have the feast of Hermes Trismegistus. If you haven't heard of this guy, you have not been reading enough. Any pagan magician or witch worth their salt should be familiar with the name Hermes Trismegistus. This character may be a real human, maybe a real collection of humans, maybe a god, maybe all of the above swirled into a I don't know, a soft serve coated in chocolate. I don't know. Um, very fancy individual, literally the root of the majority of the magical traditions in the West. Just that, right? Just that. NBD. We've got a celebrity on the show tonight. It is Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus is thought to have written the Emerald Tablet. Again, if you are a magician and you want to study some stuff, read the Emerald Tablet. Is it dry? Yeah. Is it short? Yeah. Because, back in the day, they were chiseling things into stone. So they just got right to the chase. There was no 7 chapters of introducing the characters. We're just getting right to the meat of it all, right to the beans of it all. So Hermes Trismegistus is accredited with writing the Emerald Tablet, and the Emerald Tablet and Hermes Trismegistus themselves are sort of, as I said, considered to be the root of the Western tradition of magical practices. Hermes, of course, Hermes. Trismegistus means thrice greatest, 3 times greatest. Interesting there that we've got that 3 thing, though, too, right? Because also on this same day, from our Celtic friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of the Three Mothers. From our French friends and ancestors, we have the Day of the Three Maries or Maries. So there's also something here about threes and deities that show up in 3 forms or have 3 faces also being very important on this day. Interesting stuff. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Dies Phidias. And from our French and Romani friends and ancestors, we have Saint Sara la Kali Day. Saint Sara la Kali is a Romani ancestor, archetypal figure, goddess, cultural hero. She kind of runs the gamut of all of these things, and her Genesis story is different depending on which group of people you're talking to. Sometimes Saint Sarah is actually seen as a person, and sometimes it is in reference to a statue of Mary, like a carving of Mary that washed up on the shore of a lake or a beach, um, and then helped save other people's lives that were their boat had capsized and all this other stuff. So there's a bunch of traditions connected to her. But ultimately, she is worshipped and regarded as an ancestor and a saint and a deity, and a guiding light by Romani people and the French Romani in particular. But in her name, we have La Kali. Right there, we have a connection to the goddess Kali. Very, very interesting stuff. I definitely recommend doing some research on this figure if you're interested in her. No, take it with a grain of salt, right? The Romani people certainly, Romani people, have experienced intense diaspora And so much of their history has been obliterated or rewritten to serve the agendas of other people. All the same, this is a fantastically curious and interesting character, and I definitely recommend checking her out. Also, on this day, from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have the Day of the Holy Spirit, and from our global friends and ancestors, we have Pan-Sex, Pan-Romantic Awareness Day. And this is an awareness day all around the world for folks who are pansexual or pan-romantic. That means they prefer the word pan versus bisexual. And there's a big argument amongst some people around, should we use the word bisexual versus the word pansexual? Some folks believe that the idea of bisexuality enforces the gender binary. Pansexual celebrates that humans come in all genders, and I could be attracted to any or all of them. I do personally identify as pansexual. I used to call myself bisexual. I call myself pansexual now. I am not down to argue about it, but I am down to make out about it. So I think that we can show them. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm like. You know what? We'll show them who's pansexual and who's bisexual, because we will all be in a damp puddle. But again, certainly appropriate for Beltane season, right? And in my opinion, very appropriate for the start of Gemini season, where we find gay pride in just a couple of weeks, etc., etc., etc. So, very, very suited, in my opinion, that this is here and happening now. All right. Thursday, May 25th. We have no astrology of note. There is astrology, but it's noted in the notes for patrons, but nothing too intense. So we'll scooch directly to our holy days for May 25th. From our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have from May 25th to May 31st, Igungun. From our Jewish friends and ancestors, from May 25th to the 27th, Shavuot. From our Santeria friends and ancestors, the dance of Ochosi. From our Orthodox Catholic friends and ancestors, Ascension Day. From a variety of different groups throughout Asia, this is the celebration of Tao, Mother of the World. And from our Haudenosaunee friends and ancestors, we have our planting ceremonies. Again, planting ceremonies, mostly beans, squash, corn, right? Our Three Sisters tradition. Moving into Friday, May 26th, our astrology for this day, we have Venus in Cancer, sextile Uranus in Taurus at 19 degrees. And we also have Mars in Leo, square the North Node in Taurus at 3 degrees. And then later in the day, the moon is going to scooch into Virgo. So this Venus sextile Uranus, this is part of what I was talking about a little bit a couple days ago or earlier in the week, where we might be looking for lovers, romantic partners, sexual partners, adventure partners who are way different from the folks we would normally hang out with. We want to find a person or a group of people or a new friend group or whatever that's going to jog us out of our rut, that's going to shake it up a little bit and bring something new and different and weird and unexpected into our life. And because it's a sextile, probably most of us will be into that. How we as individuals handle transits when Uranus is involved is really subjective, because some of us love routine. Some of us like things to be set in their place and orderly, and everything is very expected and predictable, and everything is chill. And then other times and other people are like, nope, I want it radical. I want it weird. I want it unexpected. I want something new every day. I don't want a routine. I don't want predictability. I want strangeness. I want unexpected and unusual and surprising. So wherever you fall in that conversation either as a practice or on that particular day, is how you're going to receive a transit from Uranus. If you are like, I need predictable, Uranus rolls in, is like, oh God, this guy again, shut up, leave me alone. And Uranus is like, hey man, you're calcified in some places. You're like super frozen and stagnant in some places. Let me help you break some of this up. That's Uranus's job. That's what it represents. And then if we're in a place or a type of person that's like, I like the unexpected, I like the weird, I like the unusual, then sextiles or transits from Uranus are like, hooray, finally, I get a day where some weird things are going to happen, something unexpected, something unusual. I meet a new person, exciting, cool, good. So work with that as you see fit. And then, as I said, also on this day, we have Mars and Leo square the North Node. So I think that this might also call back some of the stuff that was happening over the weekend and early in the week with the Sun, Pluto, Mars business, and then that Mars, Jupiter square business. This might be kind of a reconciling of those things, or the fallout, that comes after a few days after an event. Because it's square, it might not be super fun. And when it's the North Node, things might feel very destined or fated. So initially, whatever this is, if it's happening for you in your personal life, it might feel like, oh, wow, here's the fallout from that thing with all those power dynamics and that big power struggle that happened. And I'm just like a tiny little piece of flotsam on a giant sea, and there's nothing I can do about this situation. I'm just getting tossed about, and there's, what am I supposed to do? I'm getting buried here. This is a massive mountain, and there's no way that I can personally move it. And I don't know what to tell you. Probably not true. Possibly true. Probably not true. There probably is something you can do about it eventually. But when it comes to the North Node, again, things can feel very destined and very fated. And those words for some people equate to, I don't have any say here. I don't have any control here. And with Mars in the mix, it's like, but I want to fight about it. I want to argue about it. I want to throw myself up against this wall. We can even step into stuff like, martyrdom. When Mars is having a really bad time, of like, I will destroy myself in the face of this thing. I will obliterate myself. We've got a lot of war stuff going on with Mars shit, Temple to Bologna this week, da-da-da-da. So just, again, if you need to take a walk around the block, take a fucking walk around the block, man. Do it. Keep yourself healthy. All right. Also on this day, we have a heliacal rising of 2 fixed stars, Hyadum 1 and 2. And these are both stars that are also found in the Pleiades / Taurus chunk of the sky. I don't have anything too exciting to say about them, just that's where they're found. And let me just check my notes really, really quick and make sure that that's true, that I don't have anything exciting to say about them. Found in Taurus, part of the Pleiades. Yeah, we're good. Astrology King is where I get a lot, not all, but a lot of my information about fixed stars. So if you want to read more about Alcyon or Hyades, check out astrologyking.com. Piles of information there. Okay, also on this day, running from May 26th to June 12th, from our Tibetan friends and ancestors, we have Sagadawa Dukin. This is basically yet another chunk of time dedicated to the birth of Buddha and like his whole life cycle. From our pagan friends and ancestors on the modern wheel of the year calendars, from May 26th to the 31st, we have the festival of Diana, the moon goddess. Interestingly enough, Diana actually connected to Carna. Trippy. From our Ute friends and ancestors, we have from May 26th to 29th, approximately the bear dances. And from our Greek friends and ancestors, from May 26th to 27th, we have the festival of Thargelia, which is the festival that the month, the Greek month, is named after. And on these 2 days, from the 26th and 22nd or 27th, these 2 days would have been dedicated to Athena and Apollo. And basically, the first day was for driving bad things out, and the second day was for purifying themselves, purifying environments, purifying the land, and drawing good things in. And ultimately, this was about diseases. And so the things that are being driven out are things like mice and rats and fungus and other things that could spoil these first harvests that these folks are pulling in. Because again, remember, uh, part of the reason why this is the bean calends is because the bean harvest is actually coming to fruition at this time of year. Yes, this early already. And I just can't help think, I don't know why exactly, but I can't help think about Jack and the Beanstalk. It has been like in the back of my mind the whole time. Every time I read about Carna and every time I read about the bean calends, there's something in the back of my mind that's like Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack and the Beanstalk. And of course, we know it starts out with beans, right? He goes and trades his cow. Wait a minute. For a handful of beans that are supposed to be riches, right? Material world goods. And he gets home and his mother is like, "You doofus." But she chucks the beans through a window outside, and they plant themselves and grow overnight and become this giant stalk that Jack then climbs up and has their various adventures. So, I don't know, kids. There's something there. I'm telling you, man. There's something there. Okay. From our Southeast Asian friends and ancestors, we have Buddha Purnima. Again, Buddha birthday. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Ludi Piscatori. These are the games dedicated to Piscus, or they of the seas. So, fisher people and seafaring folks uh, jumped in for a week-long festival of games dedicated to opening up the waterways and blessing waterways, blessing harbors, blessing boats, blessing the tools that are going to be used in fishing and seafaring, like trading and merchant stuff. Okay. And last but not least, from our Roman friends and ancestors, here on May 26th, we have Vesta Aperture. And this is the opening of the temple dedicated to Vesta. Later in this month, we are going to have the giant festival, Vestalia. But this is sort of the pre-funk officially beginning for Vestalia with Vesta Aperture, meaning literally the opening of the temple of Vesta. And generally speaking, during times like this, what happens is like all of the old trappings are taken out of the temple. The gods or goddess statues often had real clothing that was woven by fancy people, either the best people or the youngest or only women or only men or whatever. People dedicated to that god or goddess. But they usually would wear like real clothes, and the statues were gigantic. So it took a minute to make the cloth and to make the clothing. So in this week, oftentimes the old clothing is taken off, or the old banners are taken down. The temples are swept out and cleaned and emptied out, basically. And then either just before the big festival or as the big festival, the new clothing is brought in and the statue is dressed and all of the new banners are hung and all of the new festoonery and whatnot are added to the temple, and everything's like, ta-da, happy birthday. All right. Okay. So that is our astrology and our holy days for the week. I'm looking at how long this podcast has already gone on. Thank you for listening this long with me. We are genuinely almost done. I kind of went ham. Sorry, or I'm not. Whatever. You're welcome. We're staying hydrated. Everything is good. So, briefly, let's go back over our astrology for the week. Friday, May 19th, 8:53 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, black new moon in Taurus at 28 degrees. And then later, the moon moves into Gemini. Saturday, May 20th, Mars moves into Leo. Mars in Leo, opposite Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, 0 degrees. Sunday, the 21st, the sun moves into Gemini. Then hours later, we have the sun in Gemini trine Pluto retrograde in Aquarius at 0 degrees. We have the moon move into Cancer. And then even later that night, we have the sun in Gemini sextile Mars in Leo at 0 degrees. Monday, May 22nd, we have Mars in Leo square Jupiter in Taurus at 1 degree. Tuesday, May 23rd, 6:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Later in the day for everybody else, we have a waxing crescent moon at 17 degrees of Cancer. Then on Wednesday, the 24th, we have the moon move into Leo, and we also have Venus in Cancer square Chiron in Aries at 18 degrees. Thursday, the 25th, nothing. And then Friday, the 26th, we have Venus in Cancer sextile Uranus in Taurus at 19 degrees. We have Mars in Leo square the North Node in Taurus at 3 degrees. And then the moon moves into Virgo. Our stuff, our magical whatnot for this stuff, I think that this is a fine week to start working with the Lovers card. The Lovers card is connected to Gemini, so very appropriate. As we move through Gemini season, I'm going to encourage you to work with the Lovers card, Gemini, the Magician card, Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, and the 8, 9, and 10 of Swords. I know, not exactly 3 of the most cheerful tarot cards in the deck, but they contain useful information and powerful states of being all the same. I have a class on the Magician, a 2-hour lecture on the Magician for patrons. Subscribe at the Venus level, $9 and higher, and you get access to the entire back catalog of all of the tarot circles that we've ever done. It's kind of fucking ridiculous, honestly. So if you want to learn about that, I have done a thing on the Lovers too. I can't remember because I've taught so many classes. Maybe I've taught a class on the Lovers. I probably should have looked that up before I did this podcast. Oh well. Let's discover together if that's true or not. I do, however, have a giant piece written on my website about the Lovers card and Gemini symbolism in Beltane season. You can find that on the Beltane page. Just scroll down on my website. And I have a big giant piece written about the 8 of Swords that has been exclusively available to patrons, and I will be putting that on my website this year. So that will be on my website soon enough. Okay, moving on to witchcraft for this week. Brewing things, wearing bright colors, sex and sensuality, especially near your plants or garden. And I do say sex and sensuality because all of us engage that energy in different ways at different levels with different people, sometimes just ourselves, sometimes there's other humans involved. So whatever is right for you, this is the time for doing that. Goddess bless the neighbor who happens to look over the fence at 2 a.m. That's what you get. Mind your own business. Okay, there we go. Doing witchcraft. Please. This is between me and the squash. So some things man was not meant to know. Okay. And our journaling prompts, but before I get into that. So witchcrafting stuff, brewing things, making things, planting stuff, producing things, bigger than just what I've got listed here, because these are all suggestions from the Beltane workbook. I would also say drawing up blueprints for stuff and taking the first step in the physical world on whatever your plan is. And taking that first step, not just drawing up the blueprints, right? Not just I have a great idea, but I have a great idea. And today I'm taking a step towards manifesting that idea here in the physical world. Knowing that, sitting comfortably, lovingly with the idea that this may not pop off anytime soon. This thing that I'm kicking off today, this first step that I'm taking in this process, might be the first of 1,000 steps, right? This process may take way longer than I think it's going to. There might be way more parts than I realize, and that's okay. That's okay. Let's grow something that's going to stand the test of time. Let's grow something bigger than just the individual cycle that we have to happen to be in right now. That's cool stuff. Okay. And for your journaling prompts, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. But this is the stuff I'm encouraging you to think about this week. Describe your relationship with the physical plane. Who or what are you in an attract repulse relationship with? And I mean that in a healthy way, but it might be manifesting in unhealthy ways for you. If you feel moved to write about it, write about that. Can you describe other types of interconnectedness? Right? Attract repulse is just one of an infinite number of ways that beings interact with each other and exchange energy. What other ways can you think of? And then describe your relationship with pleasure. And I mean that word very specifically. Not happiness, not nice, not comfortable. Pleasure. Pleasure. That stuff. Okay. All right, my friends. That is your weekly podcast. You are now charged to go out into the world and stir up some tomfoolery, some shenanigans, some hijinks. Pull a card for a friend, right? Read a friend's chart. Um, leave some flowers on somebody's door. Do some pranking. Wear some wacky colors. Brew some mead. We've got pounds of pollen in the air. This is a fantastic time for gathering up some wildflowers and utilizing them in brewing some mead. This is the time. And this sunshine and this magic and this power that you are bottling up now, you get to drink later when that beverage is ready to go. Sometime in the dark of winter. Remember winter? Remember that? Weird, huh? All right, my heathens. That's enough. That's enough for you. Blessed be.